Oh, what's up, GameLeap? This patch is back at. I hope you're all looking forward to the changes we are about to reveal, and yes, in this video we have the full rundown of the 11.10 patch changes that were released today. So if you want to know what Riot has in store for this patch, guys, and it's going to be an absolute belter, then this video is all you need. I'm going to be breaking down in detail all of the champion buffs, the champion nerfs, the item buffs, the item nerfs, how these will affect the meta, and whether it will be worth playing these champions in the near future. Now, as per, guys, I want you to tell me your thoughts on the changes in the comments, in particular if your champion is affected by any. And just a quickie, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already to make sure you don't miss any videos that we post, which are daily, by the way. And also make sure to check out the GameLeap website. Unlike other sites, guys, we upload fresh, daily, challenger tier content. You know, it's not just recycled from our YouTube. It's informative, it's original, so do yourself a favor and get signed up. Links, as always, in the description and comment section. Alright, let's get into it, guys. I'm going to start by talking about the champion buffs that Riot have in store for 11.10. And the first champion we have to talk about, well, this buff is groundbreaking. Just listen to this. Aurelia, okay, is the champion getting buffed, and Riot have decided to buff nothing. They're bumping it to a later patch. So yeah, a bit anticlimactic that one, I'm sorry about that, but yeah. The next champion getting buffed, guys, is Yuumi, who's actually struggling at the moment across the board. The new Moonstone renewal is just, well, straight up garbage compared to the old one, and Yuumi, you know, being a Moonstone user, is just pretty bad because of it. So what Riot have in store for you Yuumi players is they are buffing your Q, so in terms of your base damage, it's up by 10 at each rank, and your empowered damage as well, which is up by 15. Now, honestly, I was expecting a little bit more here. It's not the biggest buff in the world, but it will help your poke and harass in the laning phase. And seeing as some Yuumi players, if not most Yuumi players, actually max their Q first or intertwine it with a bit of maxing with their E, this actually does mean something because you're going to be accessing that extra damage earlier in a game, and that will be during the laning phase. Now we're going to stay somewhat in the bot lane, guys, because this next champion, you can play her as a support, but she's mostly seen in the mid lane. And this champion is Lux. And these changes actually seem pretty good, especially later in a game. So your E's damage is up at later ranks, and the AP ratio is up by 10% as well. This means that, well, when you max your E, yes, your base damage is going to be higher, and you do max this first. So in the laning phase, yes, you are going to be more of a threat because your poke and harass will be up. And later in the game as well, when you start scaling and getting some AP items in there, you are going to be doing a lot of damage. So when you have Ludens, when you have Horizon Focus, a Death Cap, Void Staff, you are going to be hitting very hard indeed. Now following Lux, guys, we have a champion who's kind of similar because you can play her in the bot lane, and in fact, she's actually mostly played as a support these days. I'd love to see her back in the mid lane, and I don't think this change is really going to do that. But if you're playing Zyra support, you will be happy with these changes for sure, because Riot are increasing your Vine Lashing slow, so whenever you have a plant, it's going to slow the enemy champion for more by 5%, which is great. This is going to keep them in auto attack range of your plants for longer. It's going to give you a greater chance of landing your E because they're going to be in range, and if you need to escape a gank or a certain sticky situation, you have a better chance of doing so. And what Riot are also doing, guys, is reducing your W's cooldown by 2 seconds at each rank. Now this might not look like much because, yeah, it's just your W cooldown, but for Zyra, it's actually pretty big. Getting your W up more means you can spam it more, and you are maxing this second, so you're going to be able to use your W more with your Q, more with your E. It gives you more potential to actually win the lane and dominate, which is really the big difference between Brand, Swain, and Zyra at the moment. Zyra is the worst out of the Liandry's Anguish abusers. And coupled with the Vine Lasher slow, you're going to be getting out more of these slows and making more use of it. And let's not forget, guys, that the slow is doubled. So for each plant, it's 30% of a slow. So if there's 2 plants, you're going to get 10% extra in there. So honestly, this is a really nice change for Zyra, both of these buffs. Now, for those of you who abused Kayle in the preseason when she had like a 55-60% win rate, whatever it was, well, guys, you are going to be happy about these changes because Riot are reverting the nerf that really cut Kayle big time in 10.25, so in the preseason. So what they're doing is reverting your E's damage, so your Flame's damage ratio when you're level 11, so it's going from 20% AP to 25% AP. So if you're going Nash's 2 from Riftmaker, you are going to be hitting harder than you were. And in fact, with Nash's, guys, the on hit is now going to be at 65%, which is, well, what it was last season. So in that mid to late game, you are going to be an absolute powerhouse, which you kind of are already if you can get there, but even more so now and earlier, which is a lot better. And the other buff coming to Kayle, yes, there's 2 here, guys, is at level 16, so your Transcendent passive, your additional range is doubling to 100. So you're up by 50. What this means is you're going to have 625 range base. Now, yes, okay, you're still going to get outranged by Caitlyn and Twitch with his ultimate and other AD carries who have rapid fire cannon, but those are AD carries. For Kayle, yes, okay, in team fights, you are going to eventually target the enemy AD carries, but in terms of tanks who are running at you, in terms of fighters, in terms of enemy assassins, you are going to be one-shotting them because of the reverted AP ratio in your flame. And with the extra range, guys, it's actually going to be really oppressive in those team fights, and if you're split pushing as well, because of course you can hit that that enemy champion from further away. Now, still the problem exists that you actually have to get to level 11 and then level 16 without the game being over and your lane being over because, yeah, your early game isn't exactly improving and it isn't exactly strong. So yes, you are going to still struggle in that early game, in that laning phase against champions like Renekton, Darius, even Set, you know, all these top lane bruisers and fighters you see. But once you get to level 11, once you get to level 16, hopefully you are going to be able to pop off and 1v9 as good as anyone. Now we're going to finish, guys, in terms of the champion buffs with perhaps the biggest troll buff of all time right here, because for Kennen, unfortunately, this isn't really what a lot of you were hoping for, because Riot are buffing your 4th attack in your W. So the magic damage is up by 10 at each rank and the AP ratio is up by 5%, but what does this mean? Are you going to auto attack tanks to death finally? Well, no, not really, right? Because Kennen is all about team fighting and that AoE damage. So if you're using the new rocket belt with your electrical surge and your ultimate, that's what you're really about. Now, yes, okay, in lane it might mean something, but the damage is so minimal. And get this, Kennen's base AD is lower than Yumi's. That's right, you heard that right. Kennen's base AD is lower than Yumi's. So this 4th attack you're throwing out, which is buff, yeah, okay, this might be doing a little bit more damage, but what about your other auto attacks? They are not doing anything to any champion in that top lane, and it's very hard to make Kennen work, guys, at the moment. Now, yes, okay, if Riot buff him too much, he is going to get picked and banned in pro play, but this just seems really, really troll. All right, now moving on to the champion nerfs, guys, we're going to change the mood, and hopefully some of these will make most of you happy. And as we get into them, if you're enjoying these patch updates and what, you know, the actual changes are that are coming, make sure to like the video to let us know. And starting us off, we have a champion who, well, might be the most hated champion in the game. And for Darius, your E's cooldown is getting nerfed. So it's increasing at every stage of the game, especially in the late game. So when you have it maxed, of course. Now, what really matters here is that, yes, in the early game at rank 1, it is up by 2 seconds. So in that laning phase, when you just have 1 point in your E, you are going to be Eing a little less. Now, this is kind of important. It's not the most important, but it is kind of important because your E is really your kill threat. By pulling in the enemy champion, you can then W, of course, you can then Q them, and it's great for setting up ganks. So this probably means that you're not going to be getting as many kills, maybe, and assists in a game, but still, most of your power, especially in lower elos, is still there. Your combination with Stridebreaker, yes, a lot of your power is still staying. Now, if you guys thought the Kennen buff was pretty troll, well, listen to this champion nerf, guys. So lots of people don't like Darius, well, lots of people don't like Katarina as well, right? And she's actually one of the most picked mid laners in the game and champions. Well, you guys aren't going to be displeased with this because your base movement speed is down by 5. Because whenever Riot buff movement speed by 5, guys, it is the biggest meme of all time, right? Because what does it actually mean? You know, people are expecting a Q, W, E, and for Katarina, like maybe an on-hit nerf, but there's nothing about her abilities. There's nothing really about her kidder, it's just her base movement speed, and that actually makes it into the nerf nodes. Now, will this have an impact on you winning, losing, your win rate, your success? Not really, no. So nothing to really worry about here if you're a cat main. Now, we're going to go to the bot lane, guys, and talk about the best AD carry at the moment, who is Jinx, and thankfully, you guys will be happy, and I am too, to be honest, that Riot are not touching any of the buffs they, well, put in recently, which are really making you strong. So all of that power, a bit like Darius, is staying, thank God. But the nerfs that are coming in, okay, so your base armor is down by 2, alright, so you're going to be squishier and a little bit more vulnerable in the early game in that laning phase, and your R's execute damage against epic monsters is down. It's actually capped, so at 800 damage. So you can probably still actually, you know, steal dragons and barons, but if the enemy champion actually has their D or F key for their smite, you know, locked in, they are going to be able to secure that dragon and baron. And that was pretty annoying, to be honest. You know, Jinx ultimate doing more damage than your smite, and makes it, well, kind of annoying to players. Now we're going to go back to the mid lane here, guys, and talk about 2 champions. So the first one is a mage and one of the most consistent, reliable mid laners you can pick. So for Galio, your W's cooldown is a flat 8 seconds now, and its magic damage shield, so your W, that's also down at later ranks based on your max health. And this shield nerf, guys, does actually mean something, and kind of in the context of League recently, because Rocket Belt lost some HP, and later in a game, yes, you're not going to be able to face tank and actually withstand some of that magic damage the enemy team is throwing at you, so maybe this means an extra death or 2 in the late game in particular. And yes, of course, the W cooldown, whenever a cooldown does get nerfed and, you know, increased, it is going to mean something. So for Galio, not having your W up as much means, yes, less kill threat in the laning phase, and seeing as you're not really building that much ability haste, you know, your playstyle isn't revolving around it, unlike most mages at the moment, having it at a flat 18 seconds is actually really long. Now, the other mid laner I want to talk about here, guys, is getting nerfed is Talon, and honestly, not that bad of a nerf here. So your Q's bonus attack damage ratio is down by 10%, and, well, yeah, late game, this might mean something, but honestly, if you can get your combo off, if you're still clean on Talon, you can get in all your damage there, you proc your passive, you use your ultimate, you use your Prowler's Core, your Rake, you are going to be good. You're still going to be one-shotting people. So honestly, not that bad of a change. Now, the last 2 champions getting nerfed here, guys, are 2 supports, and we're heading back to that bot lane here. And for Thresh, okay, who's been nerfed recently, your base health is down by actually quite a significant amount. It's not like 5 or 10, it's actually now 530, which is pretty low. Like, Jinx now has 80 more base HP HP than you, but your HP per level is up by 2. But later in the game, this still means that you're going to have less health. Now, is Thresh's health making him OP? No, it's just that Thresh brings so much to a lane, to a team fight if you're going the Guardian W max, or if you're playing the Death Sentence Thresh where you're maxing your Q. Either playstyle is really good and strong at the moment. So with less health, yes, okay, this might mean like an extra death or two in the laning phase. And compared to Alistar, for example, whose base HP is 600, well, maybe you actually get out-favored now. And the other support getting nerfed, guys, and the last on the list, we have to talk about Bard, whose meep damage is down by 10. But thankfully, there's no cooldown nerf, which is what's great for Bard at the moment, of course, with Cosmic Drive. So your real carry potential is still there. Now, yes, okay, in the early game, in the laning phase, your poke, your harass isn't going to be as annoying and the damage isn't going to be as impactful, but you still have all that movement speed, you still have the cooldown, as I said, and it actually seems as if Bard dodged a bit of a bullet with this one because he has had one of the highest support win rates actually generally in the game recently. Now, as we get into the item changes, guys, and there are some big ones here, it is my last friendly reminder to all of you watching to, first of all, like the video for timestamps, and to not forget to check out the GameLeap website when I stop talking. I wouldn't rave about it nearly as much if it was weaker than ADCs in the moment. So get around that top tier content, guys, that thousands of your summoners are taking advantage of. Links down below. So let's start with the item buffs in 11.10, guys, and the first one is coming to Riftmaker. As you guys can see, you're getting more damage per stack, but you're getting less stacks. So you're actually capping at 9% and not 10%, which means actually in the big picture, you're not getting as much damage in there. So if you're a Mordekaiser or even like a Singe, let's say, who's fighting for an extended period of time, your damage is down. So it's actually a nerf for these guys, but if you want short, quick trades like Akali, for example, you're actually going to be happier with this. Now, next up, guys, I want to talk about the fighter mythic Gore Drinker, which Riot said they were buffing for fighters, and honestly, this should be a nerf. Like, it's not even a buff. So the health is up by 50, which, yes, okay, is kind of an important stat, but really, yeah, not the most important, so whatever. And this is where it really gets interesting. So the AD you get based on your missing health is now down, and your healing from Gore Drinker is actually down based on your AD, but up based on your HP. So if you build more health, you're actually better off. But for fighters, it's mostly about attack damage and attack speed. So if you're an Aatrox, if you're a Riven, if you're an Olaf, these changes don't really seem to benefit you at all, if at all. So this is by far one of the most questionable buffs, if you can even call it that, in recent times. Now, next up, guys, the Ginsu's Rageblade buff. So this is simply going down by 200 gold. So if you're playing Yi, if you're playing Kog'Maw Senna, you are going to get this earlier, and for Senna in particular, who's actually pretty strong at the moment, this is definitely interesting. And finally, the Abyssal Mask buff that's coming. Well, your health is up by 50, which is always nice, and the damage and potency is up by 5%, and it's going to last an extra second. So if you're playing a Malphite, if you're playing an Ornn, someone with some really hard CC in the top lane, some sort of tank, you and your teammates are going to be one-shotting a lot more, which is pretty much what this meta is about. And finally, guys, well, it's not really an item nerf, it's actually a system nerf or a rune nerf, a keystone nerf, and this is to phase rush. So what's happening is your cooldown, which is 15 seconds, is increasing to 30 seconds in the early game, but it will be 10 seconds later in a game, so based on your level this is. And if you're a ranged champion, the movement speed you get from phase rush is actually down earlier in a game, so if you're playing Victor, if you're playing Orianna or a Syndra, any sort of mage in the mid lane, if you're playing Jace even, this is going to be impactful. And for melee champions too, it's down as well in the early game. So these champions are just going to be more killable in the early game, guys, so they're not going to be zooming to safety all the time. And even for melee champions too, I mean Hecarim, who has been copying it recently, this is another nerf that he probably didn't actually need. So those are the changes, guys, for 11.10, definitely some interesting ones in there. On the whole though, not so bad, you know, considering it is the right balance theme after all. But yeah, any thoughts, leave them in the comments, and until tomorrow's video, this has been the Jizz. Bye!